listening to The Donor Doctor Show, where your host, James Newberry, will help you improve the health of your fundraising. Now over to James.
Hello, this is The Donor Doctor again, and I recently got an email about creativity. How do you come up with new ideas? And I think that's an excellent question, and I've been giving it a lot of thought. The great late Frank Johnson, the inventor of the Johnson box. Teresa, do you know what a Johnson box is?
Yes, it's the box above the salutation.
That's right. Often used in magazine offers. If you had a story and an offer and you couldn't put them together, you would put a Johnson box above the salutation, as you said. Now it's interesting that Frank Johnson did downplay his role in inventing it. He took it from literature, actually. He said they would have a synopsis. And he actually stopped using it because it became overdone. Almost every magazine subscription or other, it ceased to have the power. It became stale. So it's often the case with a technique that's fresh at one time. We've talked about at one time, going out of business sales was a fresh concept with Claude Hopkins, and it was never done because people were so ashamed to admit they were going out of business. Now it's way overdone. It's been abused. So that's an example how things change. There's really little new under the sun. We're adapters. When I talked to Herschel Gordon Lewis, he would say, a copywriter needs a toolkit. And I like that, but I even like a spice rack better. And the reason I like the spice rack better is because you often want to use multiple tools and motivators in a package. And I think that helps you. Now, you know a thing or two about spices, don't you,
yes,
Teresa?
I do.
Now, I know you're a fan of, Ina Garten?
Ina Garten.
Who is she? The Barefoot Contessa, yes. Her husband's Jeffrey.
Yes.
And they do quite well. And she knows a lot about spices. She has some opinions, right?
She uses spices.
Well, yeah, of course she uses spices. she uses.
But she would prefer fresh herbs versus spices because actually spices come from plants and roots and all the above. That's
fine. Mm-hmm. My point is, though, she's not inventing the spices.
Absolutely not. She uses them.
She's adapting the spice that's appropriate for the recipe.
Spices are for flavor, coloring, and preservation.
Well, that's similar to what we're doing. Is that we're picking the right spice. It could be a technique. It could be a motivation. It could be appeal to outrage or exclusivity. Whatever it is, we're matching the right spice for our package. And let me give you, now some spices are much more common than others, right?
Absolutely.
I remember my mom, I'd look at her spices and I'd see like oregano, it might be small, little left. And there was other spices she never used.
Right. And those are the rare ones. Saffron is on the high end. You use a tiny bit, but it has a great shelf life, so it stays there.
Right. Well, as I was thinking about the advice I'd give somebody trying to be more creative is to apply the lessons of the masters or to try to incorporate some of the great ads of the past and to kind of think of them like spices. Let me give you an example. One of the stories I told you about was one of the masters was trying to sell these books and he couldn't sell them. Then he put somebody's name on it in gold and then they sold. What does that say? It says people like recognition, they're vain perhaps, they like seeing their name in gold. That's something to just keep in the back of your mind. You need to write that down and think, well, there may be a time where I can apply. That's a human need. There's a motivation people have. Something to use in the future. That might be like saffron, something you can't use that often.
Exactly.
But it's a useful spice when you need it. A more common example is to put a coin or dollar bill in. We know that works. The Wall Street Journal ad about that I've mentioned a few times about the two college students, college grads that were very much alike, but one subscribed to the Journal and became the president of the company. The other guy was mired in middle management. Well, that doesn't, not every day are you going to be able to do that, but if you have a situation where some people can get an item and other people can't, as in the case of bulletproof vests for soldiers, you could have one soldier gets one and survives, and you could have that contrast. And that would be like a great technique to use in that kind of situation. Perhaps the most famous spice is what?
Pepper.
Pepper, that's right. You don't even think of it as spice. It's usually kept separate from. You wouldn't even put it in the spice rack because you use it so much.
And it actually comes from a fruit tree.
I would think of something that something maybe like flattery or engagement would be a spice. Be something you'd want to use frequently, like pepper. But you want to be sincere in your flattery, and you don't want to overdo it. You know what I'm saying? Make come across insincere. So that might be a case where you could put too much pepper. Right?
Absolutely.
So you can put too much
pepper.
Any spice. You could put too much.
That you should have a blend, and then
right. Bounce back techniques. We've talked about that a lot. We had tubes and booklets, and these are all confidential reports. That was an example I gave. It's not one you could use often, but these are techniques that you can use. You need to know about them and use them when appropriate. Now, what I would do if I were reading Hopkins or any of these people is get a notebook, and when you see something that works and they tell you about something that works well, write it down and think about it when you could apply it in the future. I came across one the other day where the person said limited to 2, and like 40% more people ordered 2 because they were limited. You see the psychology involved here. People don't change, the human beings are the same. So that's a useful technique. So just write this down. And I would get a notebook. I think a lot of people, when they read books, they just kind of skim them. For you to really gain knowledge, you want to write down all these things and say, okay, I need to use that motivation. The second idea I have for you is to key off someone better than you. When I was the first football team I played on, I was not one of the better players. I was probably average. But I did one thing that was smart. There was a guy who was the fastest player on the team. He was also the hardest hitter. So he could, on the kickoffs, he'd love to tackle the people. But he would just hit them hard. He wouldn't. And they often fumbled, and the coach wanted us to go in a straight line, but I would just key on him. I would follow him, and I kind of got an idea where the ball would fumble, where you could catch it. And they said, Newberry, you have a nose for the football. Well, I really did, and I just was keying off him. I knew what was happening. I knew who the guy was going to get the tackle.
You picked your spice.
I picked my spice, yes. The next idea I would have for anybody that wants to be creative is to be seated on list. And when we talk about seated, you make a donation to a charity so you can get on their list. Or if you worked at an agency, maybe they would put you on the names anyway. You'll get a lot of mail, not just from that charity, but from others. And that's quite useful. The next idea I have for you is to study mail. Look at the envelope in close detail. And try to recreate that if affordable. You like those. What are those high-end cards you like? The papyrus.
Oh, papyrus. Yes, I love papyrus.
They have that little gold thing on back.
Oh, the seal. Yes,
and they have a long. It's not bang tail, but the flap on back's pretty long.
Oh yes, and they're very heavy and they require extra postage, but they are very nice. They're a very special spice.
Well, you may not. It may not make sense to recreate all of that, because the back flap might not be machine insertable, for example. The gold foil may or may not be a good idea, but as much as you can, if it doesn't cost you a lot more, it makes sense to make it look personal and authentic.
They do a very good job of that.
Oh yeah, I'm saying I've studied, like I pay attention to that, like wedding invitations, something like that, to try to keep my mail, details. And one of my packages got in target marketing because it looked authentic. And I think one of the reasons it got in there was I put on the upper left a gold label, and I put the woman's name, and I had a street address, okay? And most people would put the organization, a P.O. box, and not a label. They would it comes from a group. And my testing indicates that if it comes from a person, more people are more likely to read. As much as possible, if you make it from a person rather than a group,
absolutely,
that tends to be advantageous. Maybe not always, but usually it helps.
It's a personal sense.
Interestingly, and it's a compliment, so I'm not bothered by it. But people were keying off me after a while because they saw what I was doing. The first guy asked me, and I said, I have no problem with you using a label, because I wasn't the first to come up with that idea. I was the first at the agency I was at, but others had done it before. He used it just like I would want. It was a closed face, personal invitation looking type appeal. The next guy used a label, but he used it from a group, so it didn't make any sense to use a label. And then the third guy did it with a window envelope, which is really, window is not personal. There's not saying that I've done plenty of window envelopes in my day, but it's not like, it doesn't look, it doesn't make sense to send a wife letter, let's say, in a window envelope.
Yeah, it's not personal. It looks more like an invoice to me.
Yeah, no question about it. So you're kind of defeating your purpose if you do that. Now, it probably isn't fatal. So, it isn't fatal, in fact. You can violate these rules, but as much as possible, it does pay to be authentic. In fact, I remember one time a test of a handwritten font versus, it was a pretty good one versus a real font. It was interesting to me the degree to which the authentic one did better, and it was a pretty nice font, the fake font, So I've seen that the results. I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily that creative, like this gentleman suggests in his email. I remember going to an ASI show, which stands for, Advertising Specialty. It was in Vegas, and they sell like hats, T-shirts, plushes, keychains, that kind of thing. I didn't come up with any ideas. So, I went on all the booths, and maybe because it was in Vegas and I was a little bit tired from the night before, but I just didn't come up with ideas. But over time, if you're on the lookout for things, you do come up with things. For example, I went to the John Wilkes Booth tour, and the museum gift shop, they had a little puzzle, and I thought, okay, bounce back. I could send that puzzle. I could ask people to sign and return the puzzle, and I'd have like a plane or whatever you wanted to do that's related to your museum, and you could give it to kids. Now, this idea did not particularly work. Okay, so I'm giving an example, but it was creative. Is all I'm saying, and it is using a bounce back technique. I'll give you another idea that did work better. It's not a bounce back technique. I was at a Orthodox church in Maryland, and they had angel ornaments from the Holy Land made out of olive wood. And I bought like 20,000 of them and mailed it to the house file for this group who had angel in their name. So that's why I thought it'd be appropriate. And it worked pretty well. Now, a lot of that's because we got like a huge gift, which skewed things. So I didn't do it more than once, but I did it one time. And it was a successful mailing. So, that's an example where I'm just looking for things. I just come across it at a church bazaar. I'm at a museum and I see something. You often do that. Another guy I knew socially, Isaac, worked for this group called Saved Our Fur. That was a huge cause. I don't know, 5-10 years ago, it was a big cause. And I asked him, well, what's your big mail piece? What do you, because you do mail, right? Yeah, we do that. And sure enough, he wasn't in that division, but he asked, and he said, oh, yeah, we have this poster, and he showed me the poster of the Saved Our Fur. And I mailed a lot of posters for various causes, not in that niche, but for different things. And I got that idea from just knowing Isaac and asking him about it. I've gotten other ideas from being a judge in various competitions. Not that I steal, the copy or anything, but you see some technique, or it could be something minor that you can use for your package. So sometimes people think of innovation as like huge innovation. It may be just very minor. But if you get your game a little bit better, you know what I'm saying? That can you add a lot of little things that can help. One of the things I do recommend, if you're able to, is to be a judge. I think you learn a lot about what people consider good results. You'll see that a lot of people are conformist. I remember being a judge for the NEDMA, which is the New England Direct Marketing Association, for, several years. And one agency forgot you're supposed to cross off your name so you're not biased. But it was interesting to me, I could always tell their mail, because it was just all looked the same. I think that's a mistake.
Sort of like dill to me. I don't like dill. It's a boring spice.
Yeah. Okay. Let me give you another idea. I'll give you one idea I got from direct mail competition. Being a judge, was a glider. I saw a credit card. Okay, this is interesting. That was offering flights, two-way. The credit cards, they give you flight points or whatever. Yes. And they did that through a paper plane. It wasn't paper plane, but some kind of plane.
Like glider.
And I made a foam glider. And it was an okay mailing. It wasn't even a great mailing, but it was a creative idea. I saw that they had, this is a credit card for flying, and I used it for an aviation museum. So it was an interesting idea. The kids liked it. The adults didn't like it as much. It would have worked. It was just a little bit more expensive. But yeah, I'm just saying, not all these ideas will work. The posters worked great. The angel ornament worked well. This idea, the glider, was decent, and the puzzle not so much. You know what I'm saying? So, that's the thing. Not all your new ideas are going to be great. But the thing you really want to do is you want to tap into what the masters say. What Hopkins did when he put the name, the guy who was he was trying to get business from, he put his name on the train, and he impressed him. You want to do those things. So anyway, Teresa, I want to thank you. Do you have anything else to say?
Spice is the variety of life.
Variety is the spice of life, you mean?
Right.
It sure does. And creativity is the spice of life, too. That's what we're saying today.
Exactly.
So thank you much. Until next time, this is the Donor Doctor signing out.